Neha from Vancouver asked this question. Minister Blair, you've stated that RCMP reform is needed in Canada. What are your thoughts on the RCMP officers sent in against the Mi'kmaq fishers peacefully protesting? Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said the acts of violence targeted at the fishers are disgusting, unacceptable, and racist. Are the RCMP attempting to reduce this violence, or are they protecting those hurling abuse and further impeaching on Indigenous people's sovereignty in the area?
Let me be very clear. First of all, the RCMP were not and should never be sent in to deal with people who are actually exercising their legal rights. And under the Marshall decision and under treaties going back into the 1700s, Mi'kmaq Indigenous fishing rights have been a long-established right, and it is not the role of the police ever to go in and infringe on that right. What the police were actually called in for is because there were commercial fishers who were in conflict with the Indigenous fishers, and there was a situation there that was dangerous. People were in conflict. There was assaults and pushing and shoving. There was the damage of property. A van was set fire. Eventually, a warehouse was set on fire. There were acts of criminality that were taking place there between commercial fishers and the Indigenous fishers. And it is the responsibility of the police in these circumstances, frankly, the responsibility for the nation-to-nation resolution of those Indigenous fishing rights resides with the Department of Fisheries and the Mi'kmaq people in that nation-to-nation discussion. It's really important that that be allowed to proceed. But it has to proceed in an environment of peace and safety. And so the role of the police in that circumstance is to maintain the public peace and safety. And if individuals, and there were individuals there, who were attacking the Mi'kmaq fishers, attacking their property, one of whom assaulted Chief Sachs, there was a van that was set on fire, and now the warehouse that was set on fire. It was the responsibility of the police to enforce the law in those cases. And now a man has been charged with assaulting Chief Sachs. A man has been charged with setting fire to that van. The individual, we'll call him a person of interest, who was injured in the warehouse fire, is in hospital. The police are now also looking for a second suspect in that case. But the responsibility of the police there is to uphold the law, maintain the peace, and enforce the law when people break the law. And that's exactly what they have been doing. Now, I also want to say, I understand how challenging and difficult this is. And one of the things that many Canadians don't know, but the RCMP also sent in a team of what we call divisional liaison officers. They're Mi'kmaq RCMP officers. They're on the dock. They're on the scene. They're from the community. They grew up there. That's their families, their neighbors. They know that community. They're part of that community, and they're there to provide support and to act as a liaison between the Commissioner of Fishers and the Mi'kmaq in an effort to keep the peace. It's an incredibly difficult position that they find themselves in. One of the things that I was very concerned about is I didn't believe there was anywhere near enough resources there. I would also mention, if I may, policing responsibility in Nova Scotia is actually in Nova Scotia's government. Like they contract with the RCMP to provide that service in Nova Scotia. So I reached out to the Attorney General in Nova Scotia and I said, if you need more people, just ask, and I'll help you with that. And he asked, and we brought people in from Prince Edward Island and from New Brunswick. We have the Atlantic bubble, and so we can't bring people in from all across the country. We had to do it within Atlantic Canada because I wanted to make sure there was enough people there to keep the peace. And it's not about arresting people or using force. It's about maintaining the peace. While the important discussions, and they are those discussions, Bernadette Jordan, our colleague and friend, is leading those discussions. She's the Minister of Fisheries, and she's meeting in a nation-to-nation discussion with the Mi'kmaq. They're making real progress now that we've restored a more peaceful environment. It's still a difficult situation because I think it's useful to acknowledge too, first of all, we never allow for criminality and people to violate other people's rights or to victimize them. But we also know that there's a lot of commercial fishers who are very, very concerned about the industry and about conservation and about their livelihoods. But at the same time, everyone has to understand criminality and violence directed towards anyone, in particular the Mi'kmaq fishers, is just completely unacceptable. People will face the consequences of those actions. The police will lay charges. People will be prosecuted. We're trying to keep the peace.
Thank you, Bill.